All right, welcome back to another episode of Culture Camp, a really exciting one for everybody. Today, we have Leigh, Quinn, and David Spader. Thank you both again for being on the show.
Great to
Great.
be here, Jason.
Thanks for having us.
Really excited about this. We're going to be talking about success and satisfaction today, which I think are very big key factors when you're wanting to lead an organization, start to become that leader, that good manager, that business owner, whatever you may be, and specifically the two leadership results. And so we are going to dive into this. We have a lot to cover. I mean, honestly, guys, there's infinite amount of stuff we can be covering today. But I'm really excited about this because I think that there's so much in this because most people don't intentionally think about success and satisfaction in themselves and others. And then we're talking about style. A lot of this has to, do to communicating and helping them with success and satisfaction. So we'll get into it. I'm not quite sure who wants to go into it. But talking about the need to simplify leadership specifically. Leigh, David, take it away.
Yeah. So Dr. O'Connor and I started looking at trying to help leaders make better decisions, and he's been doing it a lot longer than I have. But he had a model which we started looking at again and saying, how do we help leaders make better decisions consistently? And he's an absolute master visionary in identifying these different tools and resources and methods to do that. And so we started working together on that, and we stepped back and we said, why? Always start with the why first. Why and what are we trying to accomplish? Okay. And so the what of all the different leadership books you have out there, and I've got a couple hundred on my bookshelf. I know Leigh has just as many. Dr. O probably has a couple thousand that he's read. You go through that, and in the age of AI, in the age of the internet, we all have too much information now as it relates to leadership. It used to be there was a scarcity and you could only find a couple books on the topic. And there wasn't a lot of research, and it was a lot of opinions and a lot of stories. Well, now there's a lot more research. Some of it's good. Some of it's not very good. There are certainly plenty of books. I mean, thousands and thousands of books. You go to the internet, and if you Google leader or leadership, take a guess, Jason, how many hits do you think you get today?
Millions.
It's in the billions now.
Billions.
With a B.
I mean, that's wild.
So that's not helpful, right? If I'm a leader and I got to figure out what do I need to do and why should I be doing this to achieve what outcomes, sometimes it's just overwhelming. And there are a lot of great storytellers as well that tell great stories, but they're anecdotal. So, okay, I know what that leader did in that situation with that and those people in those conditions, but does it apply, or why doesn't it apply? So your head starts to explode as a leader when you're saying, how do I consistently make decisions that are going to make me a more effective leader?
Right.
So the first thing we identified is there are only two types of results leaders need to deliver. One is success, which tends to be the harder side. Oftentimes we think about it as profit, it's achievement, it's goal orientation. It's about winning, right? Getting done what we need done.
Right.
The other bucket is satisfaction-oriented results that tend to be more relational, often thought of as, quote, the soft side. I'll make an argument about whether they're soft or not, but it's really about the relational component, and are people enjoying? Are they committed, right? So now, interesting thing, Leigh and I were chatting a little bit about golf before this. Leigh's a much better golfer than I am. I'm just getting back into it after years. But same thing in every aspect of our lives, there's a success component and a satisfaction component. You can have one without the other. And what we know about leaders is that we tend to be biased towards success-oriented outcomes or satisfaction-oriented outcomes. And as a result, we underperform our effort oftentimes, and even our intent.
Right.
So
that's interesting.
It's possible to be successful at something, but it be unsatisfying. Or said another way, it's possible I could be winning the game, but I don't enjoy playing it.
Right. Do you think that's why there's a lot of like pro athletes and people that maybe are at the top of their game that we as the public don't know why they would retire, why they would go do something else, or, even founders, why would you sell the business? Maybe they're just, maybe there's some external factors of satisfaction that are not going on.
Yeah, that certainly can be, because a lot of times if I'm overly success oriented and achievement oriented, I'll neglect or put those satisfaction oriented goals behind me, or I won't prioritize them in a way that I need to be a whole person. So we actually refer to a formula or Potentia's success, excuse me, Potentia's performance formula is success times satisfaction equals fulfillment as a person.
Hmm.
Okay. Because if you always win, but you don't ever stop to know why,
Right.
or it can be empty. As a matter of fact, and Leigh, feel free to chime in here. I've worked with a lot of executives that have climbed the corporate ladder. They finally got to the top, come to find out it's lonely at the top, and it didn't fulfill all of what they expected it to be. So now they're hollow. They said, I spent
Right.
my entire life sacrificing sometimes marriages and kids' baseball games and all dance recitals, all these things. I missed them in order to achieve this goal I set for myself. And I got there, and now I'm still working 80, 100 hours a week. I'm at the top and I'm alone and I don't have healthy relationships with anybody else. And, as much as I like the status of the title, it's not doing it for me.
Right.
Right. And so that's actually a very common pattern that happens. My wife and I are living in Charlottesville, Virginia right now at the university. She works at the university. I was at an event the other evening and I was speaking with a professor, very, very ambitious young professor. And we were chatting and somehow it got onto careers advice. And he said, well, David, doing what you do, what advice would you give to someone like me who's a professor today, who my dream is to be the president of a university? He's like, I think that would be the coolest thing in the world. I was like, that's a great goal. It's really, really awesome. Now, going back to your question about what advice, the question for you is why? Why do you really want to be a university president? And he looked at me and just kind of stopped. He said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, what's driving you to do that? What do you think about it that would be amazing? And he's stopped and he's just like, I've just always thought it would be a really cool job. I said, well, my advice to you then is you better dig into this a little bit more, or you're going to get there and you're going to stop and you're going to realize, number one, it's lonely at the top. And number two, you need more than just a title to be fulfilled as a human being in life.
Well, I think, David, you have a great example of that. You were talking about an owner of a dealership, and she, didn't like having to deal with all the stress and managing everything, but she was really good at a certain part of the business, right? And David worked with them in a succession way where she actually still in the business, but she stepped away from being the CEO of the organization, right, David? There's a great example.
Yeah,
she's much more fulfilled now.
Yeah, the role required her to do a lot of things that weren't a good fit with her disc style, but also weren't a good fit with her values and her interests. So it was a misfit motivationally from top to bottom. And she was so enlightened. She had the capability. She could do it. Extremely intelligent, capable woman. But what she realized is the life she wanted to live couldn't be lived with herself in that role. So as the owner of the business, she demoted herself to a frontline position that she loves, put someone else in charge of running the entire organization, someone who enjoys doing all those things she doesn't. And her job is literally, she said, I can be a really great employee, 9 to 5. Once a month, I sit down with my CEO president and we talk about what needs to be done as an owner. I have a different hat on then, but I go in every day. I get to come in 8, I get to leave at 5:00, and I get to leave all the problems for somebody else. And that's the life I want to live. That's a really enlightened person that has figured out how to be fulfilled. And by the way, they have run one of the most profitable businesses in North America in that industry, year in and year out.
I don't know who it is, but I think I have an idea because there's only a few of them in that industry. But I mean, how as a coach would I help someone, especially because generally entrepreneurs have a little bit of ADD, a little bit of, I'll say entrepreneurs, executives, a little bit of ADD. They have the fox approach. They're just trying to jump at every opportunity, and it's kind of like the whole, the story of like Apple, when they fired Steve Jobs, they went and got 355 SKUs, and then they hired Steve Jobs back and like do 10, focus on these 10 and how to hyper focus. And a lot of, entrepreneurs and business owners, they're sitting here wanting to do all these things. And like, I think it's interesting that you said this, David. They have the capability of doing it, but should they be doing it? There's a success and satisfaction. There's a motivational part of it that, no, you should not be doing it. But how do you get someone to understand, like, almost like the pride and ego to step aside and say, you need to move over? Or like, how do you help them get enlightened with
Well,
that?
I think where you're going, Jason, and where David's been talking is to get into the discussion of what, just like he said to the young professor, why, tell me what first got you into the business, or what motivated you to become CEO, or whatever that is, understanding what and why.
Right.
And then asking them, how's it going now? Is it what you thought it was going to be? And the answer generally is no. And then tell me what it is. And a lot of it has to do with what David's talking about, is time, energy, and effort that is needed, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But if you're moving in as a CEO of a Fortune 100 company, the responsibilities you have are overwhelming. You're never given a chance to take a break. But then you think about the subordinates they have, right? Their direct reports. It's no different for them.
Right.
So at the end of the day, what I have an example of an individual, another woman who's got an amazing business, an interior design company, and we have just spent the entire year reorganizing her business to provide her. She's successful, but she has not been satisfied. And the reason why is because she hasn't put the right people in the right seats, let alone giving her the right seat for herself. If we go back to some of the things we talked about, but I think Dave is going to get into this on the 4 types of leaders. She's a very optimistic operator, as Dave would call it. However, in the unfavorable situation, becomes more of a pleaser. So she wants everybody to feel good and everything else. Admittedly, people were taking advantage of that situation with her, where a project needed to be completed, and all of a sudden the individual's going on vacation. Who's the project left to was back to her. And that individual wasn't taking personal accountability for it. So learning how to, one, address that in the moment, and David will get into that down the road, but understanding herself that pleaser side of her was not helping her. Even though she was being successful, she was wearing herself out.
Right.
And no longer enjoying. And so she wanted to go back to what she really wants to be, is creative, instead of managing a bunch of people all the time. So I said, well, you need to find people that are like-minded, meaning of values-based, and are willing to be accountable, and then being able to have these open conversations about what the expectations are.
Right.
And now we're a year into this. Just had a conversation with her today. She is more satisfied than she's been in a long time, and her business is extremely successful. But that was intentional.
Yeah. No, and that's huge, because I don't really feel like a lot of executives or owners are in a position like that. But I also don't feel like sometimes that they have, and like that's why I love, the assessments and what, Potentia does, is because it is that quantifiable plan to do it. Because a lot of people are like, I'm stuck because I own it and I got to do XYZ. And it's kind of funny, when I was back in the, the RV world, is I'd meet a lot of owners who didn't run the business. They sold. And I'm like, why would you sell? And so I'm really good at it. It's what I love to do. Or like, my wife takes care of all the stuff I don't like to do, or I have this guy running it, but I sell, or I do the financing, or I'm just the general manager and I don't really do things. Like, it's, and I even, kind of got in this situation of like, I got into a situation where I hated doing what I was doing. Like we had the stores in Oregon, we had the stores in Missouri, and a lot of it was the market, you know, but even before that, I was living I was doing all the thing. It was not as sexy as everybody thought it was.
No.
And I was kind of
Never is.
actively searching for someone to kind of take things over, and it ended up just, you know, it all kind of ended abruptly. But yeah, I mean, I needed to really find out what I wanted to do. And, you know, I'm even going through it now. Like,
So,
I feel like I have too many things going on and I got to figure out what I want to do.
so Jason, going back to your initial question that started us down this is the great question of where do you start and how do you do it? Well,
Right.
the assessments help us have a model to structure the conversations that Leigh's talking about. And I know he used them with the women he was talking about there. That's where the assessments come in. But where to start, it depends on whether it's a success issue or a satisfaction issue.
Yeah. Which
Okay,
one
now,
is more like, do you focus on first? Is it like, okay, we're going to focus, like, is it
yeah,
step one, step
depending on
two?
what the issue is. So
Okay.
I'm in a job that I love, but I'm doing terrible. I need to focus on
Yeah.
success. Now, loosely, I'm going to oversimplify this just a little bit, but in general or primarily, satisfaction primarily comes from our motivation and our motivators and fit with our motivation. Okay. Success comes primarily from our capabilities or our ability to do the job. Okay.
Okay.
So if I'm in a job that I love, or if we go back to golf where I started to say a little bit earlier, I love to golf. I haven't had time to do it for a long time. I'm finally in a situation where I can do it again, or I'm just committing to do more of it maybe. So I love to golf. I'm really not very good. Okay. So I need to focus not on my love of the game and is it where I want to spend 4 hours multiple times a week.
Right.
Okay. I know I'm going to get a lot of positive satisfaction oriented energy from it.
Right.
It's the success. So I need to work on my capabilities to make it even more satisfying.
Right.
Okay. Now, if I were a really good, solid golfer and I were hitting a lot of my goals, okay, but I didn't like the lifestyle, or a very real situation in my case, I'm a coach and consultant and I'm known to be pretty good. I think you mentioned I did something that you came back to us more than once to
Yep.
learn from us, right?
Yep.
So I'm having some good success as a coach and consultant, but over time it was wearing more and more on me because I had to be on the road 150, 200 days a year.
Right.
I'm becoming exhausted, and the type of work is now a lot more work that's not energizing to me. I'm good at it. I've become good at it and actually became a curse that I was capable at it, because the better I got at it, the more people wanted that. And the
Right.
less time I had to do what I really enjoyed,
That's interesting.
which was the back end. And so if it's a satisfaction issue, so if we could go back, rewind, Jason, and go way back to before you purchased any business and sat down and said, okay, Jason, is success more important to you, satisfaction more important to you, or do you want a combination of those two where they're multipliers and you're fulfilled and you feel like you're making a difference in the world while also leveraging your skills to the best way possible? Of those three choices, which one is the one that's most important to you?
To me, probably the latter. I mean, I want
Okay,
to
so it's
have,
fulfillment. So
yeah.
knowing that, let's talk about then what's going to sustain your energy, which is primarily satisfaction-oriented motivators. So let's talk about what you're wired to do, style or disc. Okay,
Right.
most naturally, and some of your natural habits, preferences, behaviors. Okay, what do you feel your underlying values are? Why do you want to achieve this? Is it for you? Is it for others? Is it just to have fun? Is it to change the world? Those are values-based decisions. Okay,
Right.
which is your values type? Which type is most important to you? All of which, taking care of number one is important. So is saving the world.
For
You
sure.
get to decide your values and what's most important.
Right.
Then let's talk about what's going to be most aligned with those. And then let's look at your interests. What are the types of things you most enjoy? Okay. And let's look at these then. Now, once we've determined that, now let's step away and say, okay, now what capabilities do you need to develop to be successful to achieve your your life's purpose and what you've defined as what's most enjoyable to you?
Right.
And we help people work through that. And those motivations of what satisfy us over time change.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so it's
Yeah.
an ongoing process of self-discovery and what's important Why is it important? And then how do I align the capabilities with that? And so we've kind of got it backwards in most of the leadership environment right now, in the human capital environment. We see stuff about skills and capabilities all the time.
Right.
Because organizations, businesses want to know, how do I put someone in the seat that can perform at a very high level? But they're not asking, why are they performing at that high level and can they sustain it?
Right.
Which is the more important question on that satisfying, really understanding the motivation and satisfaction component to that, so that that performance is sustainable.
Right. Right. So would you say, and I like how you're putting that, would you say that the satisfaction is the fuel and the driver and like you said, the sustainability of the success? And if you only have success, the satisfaction is going to wear out. And if you only have the satisfaction, you may be satisfied, but you're going to sort of, in a way, be stagnant, maybe like climbing up the corporate, like maybe financially,
Yeah.
whatever that may be.
Yeah. Or if we go back to golf, I may love golfing, but you know what? I don't want to be a terrible golfer forever. At some point, if I'm not improving and
Right.
I never hit a good shot in 18 holes, I'm probably not going to continue to do that for very
Right.
long, right?
That's why the golfing gods have you hit that one good
Yeah.
shot.
I've said, the only activity I've really found that where you have success, you may have some satisfaction without success, and you keep going back to it, seems to be golf.
Yeah. No, it's
If it were
it's
football or
one,
basketball or something else, you'd move on, but somehow
right.
that one shot brings you back.
Yeah. Like I've hit plenty of threes playing basketball and I'm like, nope, I'm okay. But it's that one drive where I'm like, I live. Like this is the best thing. This is the best moment of my life. It's funny how that happens, but it's true. Like I like that example, and I like kind of bring it, because people would say, like, is it success? Is it satisfaction? Is, which one? And they gotta kind of both work together to make it work.
If you take it to a bigger level, joining you on that, Jason, if you think about an organization and you're big on culture, and David could probably share some research, but the organizations that have the most sustainability, most growth, most profitability, you name it, have the balance of success and satisfaction.
Right.
For all the people in their organization. And they
Right.
have this intention to do that. Again, it's also rare, by the way. And sometimes organizations have it for a period of time and then it goes away.
Right.
So again, like David said, you have to work at it. You got to understand and ask the right questions. Why are we doing this right now? What do we need to be doing? Why do we need to be doing it? How do we need to be doing it?
Right.
Does that work for everybody? Who doesn't it work for?
And it's
Right.
also interesting that when you look at it from an organizational level, that concept of success and satisfaction actually aligns with our business model as well, optimal business
Right.
performance model, in the 4 factors of culture, people, process, and strategy as the 4 components that need to operate together to sustain high performance. So
Right.
culture and people are more satisfaction oriented primarily. Strategy and processes are more success oriented primarily. And when they work together, that's how you sustain and build a high performing organization. Jason, as a leader with a title of Culture Camp,
Right.
right away, that's obviously a satisfaction oriented. And if people are really important to you as a high I, and, just your values and interests and other components, okay, what's your risk as a leader? I'm going to focus on those as the only solutions, not integrate them with the strategy and process, because I'm more satisfaction, or I'm going to have a bias towards those types of solutions, when I should instead be saying, no, this is actually a process issue. No, this is a strategy issue. Culture and people can't solve this. This is a different component, and I need to manage that and prioritize that differently at different times.
Right. No, and it's true. And, me consulting and going into businesses, I have at least one client top of my mind that I went in for something completely separate. It was more of, marketing play. And the more we started asking them questions, I'm like, you guys we're going to just drive traffic to an empty bucket of life. Like, you guys have to work on, the culture, the people of this business. Cause then it was just so much infighting and this going on, that's going on. I'm like, it wasn't even a process and strat. Like they had great process strategy. It was a personality people thing. And so we started to do some work for them or work with them. And now they've actually all that strategy and everything they were doing has actually catapulted them to more success than they've ever had.
Yeah, an organization Leigh and I worked with as well is interesting, and we'll talk about the 4 types of leaders because they had an interesting pattern there. But they excelled at strategy and process, highly profitable for a very long time. But what was their issue? Turnover, right?
Interesting.
And so they were constantly struggle with keeping good people, and they paid above average. It wasn't salary. So there was something else going on, and they were so good at strategy and process. People just felt like they were in a grinder, right? They came in and they worked them hard. And when they got tired enough, they moved on to somewhere else.
Right.
And it wasn't even that they were being led by bad people. These were good people with good values. Their just unconscious bias and blind spots were around people and culture. When they started to address that and they started to keep their people, what do you think happened to their already very good profitability?
Oh, I'm sure it skyrocketed.
Yeah. It's just, wow, I didn't even know we were leaving that much on the table.
Right.
Okay. And so because that turnover was so costly, and they implemented into how do we hire for culture? How do we make sure our managers know how to address it? And so we use this productive assessment that yields these 4 types of leaders. And Leigh mentioned the optimistic operators.
Right.
And so there's another type, crisis navigators. They tend to be better performing in unfavorable situations with more direction and control. They tend to be harder side, tend to focus more on success, less on satisfaction. And so what we saw there is we've got, I don't remember the exact number right now, but we've got hundreds, thousands of data points from these patterns, right? And so what we're seeing across the country is that optimistic operators, those pleasers, satisfaction oriented, are about 8% of the population. They tend to do really well in favorable situations.
That's what I want to get into too, is talk about these in favorable and unfavorable, because I'm interested to see how that teeter-totters back and forth.
Yeah. So if you think about it, right, if it's satisfaction oriented, when things are favorable, are people primarily focusing by definition on what's going well, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
When things are working in favorable environment, the optimistic operator, let's keep going. What happens when your team's winning the game? Are people more optimistic and positive, enjoying themselves?
Yeah.
Absolutely. You're winning the game. So let's keep cheering. Let's keep that positive energy going. You don't need lots of direction and control. It's about supporting and relating and sustaining, right?
Right.
So then you look at the crisis navigators, who are the opposite end of the spectrum. They're better in unfavorable situations, tend to be more directing and controlling. And we see more of these at about 17% of the people we've assessed.
Interesting.
Okay, so why would that be the case? Because are most organizations to survive, especially for-profit businesses, need to make money. Money is success. It's one of the primary measures, right? So they're delivering on their numbers. And so you need to have them or you're out of business.
Right.
Or you need to at least hit profitability. You don't need to be a crisis navigator. Okay. Because when they go too far, they become pushers. Okay. Or we're winning the game and now the coach is screaming at me.
Right.
Am I likely to sustain that higher performance when things are going well if the coach hasn't adjusted that optimistic as we've gotten ahead in the game, we're now winning it, and I still can't do anything right? Is that motivating or demotivating? They're using over controlling, over directing. So how many times do you see teams come out on a tear in the first half or first period? They go in to the locker room, they come out and they're flat, because they have a coach that's a crisis navigator that's directing, controlling, goes in, talks only about what we did wrong and how we need to fix it, and we can't lose this lead. Well, they need to add a little bit more from the optimistic operator to catch people doing things right, not beat them down for the few things they're not doing right. Yes, still focus on that, but make sure we spend more time celebrating what we've done and continue doing what we've done well and not over managing. So what happens? At the end of the day, the crisis navigators tend to micromanage favorable situations. That's a great way to simplify it. Optimistic operators tend to undermanage unfavorable situations. So they're not being directive enough. So there's this bias that we have. And then we have what we call the prodaptives that are good at delivering both favorable and unfavorable environments. That's about 7%, which is not very big. And then the largest group that tend to underperform their effort and intent is 68%. And those are the potentials. They don't tend to perform overly well. They're only okay in both favorable and unfavorable environments. Okay. And so when they need to deliver both success and satisfaction, they're not delivering either. Optimistic operators, good at delivering satisfaction, but not success. Crisis navigators, good at delivering success, not satisfaction. Prodaptives, deliver both across environments. And then the potentials underperform delivering both success and satisfaction. And oftentimes it's not because they're not working hard or because they care. It's because they just don't understand how to do it differently.
Right. So I think that's fascinating, because what I'm hearing is the data is saying that the bulk of your workforce is, in the potential bucket of underperforming and undersatisfied.
Yeah. And to clarify, that's leaders and managers. So these are leaders and managers that are assessing this, because it's a leadership and management model.
The bulk, I guess, even the bulk of my managers, which even to me is worse, because it
is.
It's the potential is leading more potential. Like it's kind of the blind leading the blind. And I hate to say it that bluntly, but how do I, one, identify that, and two, what is like an action plan, or how would I start to help them jump to one side or the other, or is it even possible?
I'm going to let Leigh run with this one, because he's absolutely incredible at doing this.
Well, when we talk about success and satisfaction, and when some is driving one way or the other, and as David talked about, both is important. Secondarily is I don't know if we want to get a diagnosing tool at this point, David, but you're leading me in that direction. One of the most important things is why David and I, over the years, have gravitated all the way in with Dr. O'Connor's work, is it starts with favorable and unfavorable, like we talked about earlier, like you were asking, Jason. So the first thing I have to do, and it also starts with understanding the motivation of the individual I'm engaging. So I have to understand, what are they motivated by? Secondly, so I have to understand, are they motivated actually to make the change? Let's say they're highly success oriented and they need to be more focused on the culture people side, that satisfaction side. Well, are they motivated to do that? The individual might be motivated, and they might be motivated not from a style base. They might be motivated from a values perspective, like David talked about. It's either a we or I'll win perspective. They just don't know how to do it.
Right.
Then we have to say, it's okay, what's the capability that they have? Now, when they're starting to that is, what's their performance? How have they demonstrated this performance in the past? What happens when they're in an unfavorable situation? Well, they tend to take over, dictate, and demand, and start telling people what to do. Well, just like we talked about earlier, if they're motivated to make the change, then talk to them about, well, when you're in that situation, what could you do differently?
Right.
Well, I could step back. I could ask more questions. However, there's some other aspects that might need to be looked at. What's in the environment? How stable is that environment? Jason, you were in a situation in your world where for a while things were unstable, but they were unstable in a great way through COVID, right?
Right.
You just couldn't get product and inventory. However, people were ready to go, but that's a different thing that was happening. Most of the time, you would think you weren't getting people able to come to the dealerships. You were having plenty. Then what started to happen is the market started to change, inventory started to grow, and now the market changed where you were not getting a lot of people coming to the dealerships.
Right. PTSD.
Yeah. But what had to happen for you is, okay, how do we have to adapt. We have to do something different. But I was talking about stability. The environment had something's going on in the environment that's causing the leader or the people to operate they were.
Right. Absolutely.
Then I have to take a look at the task. Is what I'm asking of myself or others complex or not complex? You know, is it something that we've done before, or is it something totally new and different?
Right.
Depending on my answer to those questions will be then what I need to do as a leader. So let's say David, he's had several individuals of this type where the leader was motivated, more than capable, because they had the capability. But the environment that we're in actually was more negative than positive for that person. How does that person start to operate differently? So what most people would have done is spent more time around performance versus understanding the environment of the organization.
Right.
Now they would be focusing on the inappropriate thing, and the outcome, it wouldn't be any better.
Right.
And this is where David's talking about the adaptive will understand whether they need to be success focused or satisfaction focused. It might be that the individual needs to be satisfaction focused for their
Right.
culture.
No, that's interesting. And I think that a lot of people, I don't know, depend on their style. I would say a lot of, business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, managers, whoever, their first response or reaction is to revenue. Like,
Right.
and it's not like, let's take a step back, even if it's for 30 minutes or an hour, and really think about the foundational pieces of the organization and that satisfaction side to make sure it's almost like, kind of like, I was joking marketing, it's like a bad website. We're going to drive a bunch of traffic to nothing. And it's like, if you build that, because if you are in that, like I was in that rough environment, a long time, a very long time. I had to kind of take a step back, and I tried to do possibly everything I could on the culture side to be able to help everybody, stay sticky. And I just, Leigh, I had pretty much like my two, executives walk out on me on the same day, and I became I had 10 people in our office, and I became Jason. And so I had to really hone in on that. But it's interesting, because now thinking about it, I made a phone call, and I was more focused on the team and, hey, are we good? I want you to know that, like, we changed to more of a manager instead of I don't know, the different model. Instead of function driven for regional people, we turned into a store driven. That's what is store driven.
Yeah.
We're going to do this, we're going to do that. I'm going to give you this bonus and that, but we're just, I just want us to succeed, and kind of went into that. And it did hold on I feel like it kind of got us through a little bit to the end. But maybe that was because of the training that I went to the people, because I truly do feel like you build a better person, you build a better culture, you build a better team, you invest in team, you build a better business. Like you were talking, David, with that company that really focused on their people, and then it catapulted them to different profitability they never seemed. But I don't necessarily feel like that's the norm out there, unless how
and that's
to.
what we see, right? 68% of the leaders we've looked at are underperforming
Right.
their effort. And
Which is
so just like
staggering. Like that's
there's that
wild to think
bias
about.
for success or satisfaction. And Leigh was talking about 3 types of root causes there in the diagnosis: behavior, environment, or task.
Right.
We also have biases towards the solutions we want to use to fix everything.
Right.
And so some people are all about task and process, and you got to have process, and you got to have process. Yeah, you do have to have process, but it's not the only solution. It's not the only root cause. If people
Right.
aren't committed to the process, behavior, you can have the best process in the world and it won't matter.
Right.
Environment, if the internal or external environment primarily being culture or subculture, external environment being, in the business world, the economy and other things. If you can be have the best process in the world, the best people in the world, but if 80% of your customers go away, like happened to my father in the 1970s during the oil crisis, right? Lost 80% of their customers in less than 2 months.
Right.
Okay. It doesn't matter. You can do everything right. You need to respond to that, be responsive to that external environment. So again, we see these biases, and having the ability to step back and say, okay, step 1, how favorable or unfavorable is it? So I know what sort of approach to use, more focused on success or satisfaction, and directing and supporting, or relating and controlling and directing. Or And then step 2, what's primarily driving that success? Behavior, environment, or task? What's the primary, secondary, and even tertiary, if it's a more complex problem, that I need to focus on, in what order? Well,
Right.
now you're becoming very strategic about the way you act as a leader, and you're diagnosing the right causes. And by the way, we've talked about negative situations. We're thinking too oftentimes about how to diagnose what's not working.
Right.
What about being that teams that's is a dynasty? You know what they do? They focus on what are we doing super well that we shouldn't change? And how do
Right.
we reinforce that and recognize that? And so we're intentionally diagnosing favorable situations and what's driving that behavior, environment, and task. And how can we continue to build on that, but only after we reinforce what we've already done so well that's allowed us to be this successful. So it's a both and, not an either or.
No, I think that's interesting because there's so much to this, which is great. And it's interesting the reason why I'm thinking of a situation in my head right now that I'm like, I need to practice what I preach right now. But how do you
imagine what it's like being us, Jason? I tell myself that about 10 times a day. Spader, you know better than that.
Right. No, and it's true. Like I do know better than that. And it's hard to be like, it's just, I'm thinking through multiple different situations, as I'm sure the listeners are right now. How, and I don't even want to ask the question of like, how to identify what's most important, because they're all important and they all kind of piggyback off each other, and you need to identify everything and then make the best plan to move forward. And I think what I'm hearing is it is important to take that step back and ask these right questions. And
the interesting thing is, a lot of people say, well, I don't have time to do that.
Right.
So
you don't have time not to.
So you have time to make lots of mistakes,
right,
and do the wrong things in the wrong order.
Right.
How is that going to help you with your time? What we find is that, yes, it may take a little time to develop the habits and capabilities around it. But once you do that and you're disciplined about it, the most extreme example I saw of this, I worked with a leader who grew his business significantly, invited us in because it just didn't feel right. He knew he had a culture issue, didn't know how to define it, wasn't quite sure what it was. But the guy came out of accounting, so naturally dot the I, cross the T, control oriented, involved in every process, fear of failure, wants to be perfect. And he was really good, heart of gold, great guy. But he said, I hired this great team, and I feel like I'm more busy than I've ever been before. I actually want to step away from the business and have somebody else run it, but nobody can do their job. Well, we came in and we started with those two questions, primarily around favorable or unfavorable, and the responsibilities for the people that he had hired. And what he came to realize, he wasn't letting any of them do their job. He was still telling everybody how to do what, when, where, how, and had his fingers in it. He literally went from 80 plus hours a week in a 3-week period as he stepped back and said, hey, Leigh, I understand I've been managing you incorrectly. You have the ability to do this, and this that I have been involved in. Unless you have a problem, I don't want you to come to me ever again, because I know you've got this. And I have confidence in you doing that. I apologize for micromanaging you. He went from 80 plus hours a week to 3 weeks later, 30 hours a week, while his organization became more effective. And one of his measures of achievement was how much he got to golf. And so he's like, I'm getting more golfing in than I've gotten in years.
That's a good measurement. That's a really good measurement.
But that great example of, did he have time not to stop and learn how to do that?
Right. And I think that, like, I think there's a lot of owners that I think make an excuse of that. Oh, I don't have enough time. Oh, this is like, and it's like, okay. Okay, do you want to? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over, expecting different results. So if you think nothing's going to change, or if you want something to change but you don't change, then I don't know what to tell you, or how to help you.
And to go back to your question, Jason, that's a nice way to maybe put a bow on everything we've talked about, right? So something's not working, stopping and asking, is it primarily a success issue or a satisfaction issue?
Right.
Right. And then starting down that process that we started with the favorable, unfavorable, and the root cause diagnosis. That's the next step. But if people just stopped and asked, okay, is this primarily a satisfaction or a success issue? It actually starts to change the way you think as a leader, because it's forcing you to start with the two most important components of sustainable high performance at the individual and organizational level. And what is it I'm trying to fix?
Right.
Yeah, and to add to what David's saying, just to break it down one more level for people, because I realize, success and satisfaction could have more of a nebulous point. David had mentioned early on that when you're thinking of success, we're talking about profitability, we're talking productivity, and those types of things in the business. So if you have a productivity issue or you have a profitability issue, you've got a success issue. On the other hand, if you have a morale or commitment, in other words, retention issue, it's more likely a satisfaction.
Right.
So that's why he says, and I agree with David, what is going on in the business? And then even taking a look, he says externally what's happening, but primarily if you've got an issue, what is it? And then you can decide, okay, now how do I diagnose it? The big problem, though, is people go at it from their own perspective, their own biases, as David said earlier.
Right.
And so I need to then say is, what is my bias? Well, my bias is more success oriented.
Right.
All right. And like I think you mentioned, Jason, in one of the companies, well, I'm profitable, but I'm not keeping people. I'm paying them well, as David said, but they're still leaving. Why are they leaving?
Right.
The more, again, the leader can look inwardly, which is not easy to do because we tend to push things out instead of look in, the better off they're going to be, and the answer is going to be more clear, and the results will start to show themselves.
Right.
But again, if you take a look at the statistics that Dr. O and Dave have come up with, 68% of
So that's
the
a lot.
leaders, and only 7% actually know how to be productive.
That's wild.
So,
That's
that
wild.
means the remaining percentage do one thing or the other okay, but they don't do both well.
Right.
Yeah. And if we want to bring it back to previous episodes, it's not the only factor related to whether our bias is success or satisfaction oriented, but D's and C's, dominant directors, cautious thinkers, tend to consciously and unconsciously focus on success, harder outcomes.
Right.
I's and S's, the interactive socializers and steady relators, tend, not always, but tend to be more satisfaction oriented. So at our most instinctive core temperamental personality, we have a bias towards success or satisfaction that oftentimes causes some of those challenges.
Right. No, and I think that's true for myself. Like I almost get caught up sometimes too much in the more of the satisfaction instead of the success part where I remember like selling our Missouri stores and the guy was very success oriented. He could care less about if anybody liked anything a part of their company. And I mean, he kept ripping me apart. And I'm like, me and you'd work really well together because I could help the people, you could help the results. And like you have a people problem, I have a results problem, and I have a results problem, not a people problem. And I had a bunch of great people asking me what direction, and I'm like, well, that's not my department. I don't know how to help you there. So last question. If I'm a leader, so two parts, because leaders coach and coaches coach. So how often am I doing this check, either in someone in if I'm coaching someone's organization or if I'm helping myself and my team, as far as how often am I looking at is it success? Is it a satisfaction? Is it a weekly thing? Is it a daily thing? Is it a monthly thing? Is it a only when there's a dip? Is it only when there's an up? Like how do I consciously think about that? And is there an assessment with Potentia that can help with this?
Well, the answer as to when you should be thinking about it, especially if you're a leader or a manager, is every interaction you have. Okay, because it's micro interactions even. So If I'm coaching you, Jason, and it starts to become more unfavorable, okay, and it's related to a success issue, I need to be diagnosing, am I taking you in the right direction? Am I being supportive and relating to you when I need to be directing and be using a different approach? And so I constantly want to be asking, okay, are we achieving I need to know what the primary objective is. Is it more success or satisfying? And then is it more favorable or unfavorable? And am I using the right approach there? And it can shift. I can be coaching you and it could be going in the right direction. It's more favorable. Things are going really well. And then Jason, maybe you say, yeah, and so here's what I'm going to do next. And I go, whoa, no.
Right.
You're going to know that we're really good up to here. And here's why. Now, I'd like to hear from you, whether you agree with that. We can have a conversation about that. But it's constant all day, every day when you're most effective.
And I love that because I do
join on
think
that, Jason, for a second.
Yeah.
I had I don't know, there's a client I worked with for well over 15 years, a large insurance organization, and one of the key leaders in the organization years ago asked me, how often do I people read and how often do I use the predictive approach? Like David said, I do it all the time. Every minute, every second, every day, I'm engaging with a group of people. What should my approach be? What's their motivation? What is needed in this moment? And the thing that you're going to learn by using the work, and you know this, Jason, but David and I know this, once you've learned how powerful, how useful it is, not only for oneself, but for others, you can't turn it off.
Right.
So people reading is something people who are listening to this, as you start to learn how to do it, you'll use it every single day. It'll help you be more effective in your interaction. If you're trying to deal with performance management, either someone who's a high performer or someone who's a low performer, you're going to need to use this every day. Because, like David said, if it's an unfavorable situation, and Jason, I've seen in this situation, is not responding appropriately to the people in that room, I need to treat Jason differently in that moment. On the other hand, it's a favorable situation and Jason's responding appropriately. I just need to be encouraging Jason, opposed to redirecting Jason. And those situations could be happening within minutes of each other.
Right.
I just have to be aware of that.
I love that. And I like that you both bring that up, because I feel like, one, you got to make it something so important to you that it can't ever turn off, right? Like that you have those habits where, I mean, when we go out to eat, I'm like, talk to the waitress or the waiter, and I'm like, oh, they're like a super high, this, we're going to have a good time. And, like if you say their name, are they a little bit more embarrassed?
But please make sure to write my drink down correctly.
Right. And yeah, it's just, it's interesting. But I also think that like there's a lot of people out there and in leadership positions that don't feel like I have to be on all the time, right? Like, oh, I only have to do a speed check, once a week, or just during my one-on-ones, and this and that and the other. But I like that you both said pretty much 100% of the time, every interaction, every time, because right there, it's those, like you said, those micro instances.
And Jason, it's about getting to a point where it's not even having to be on or off. It's about just being more effective in every situation.
And I love that. I think that's so true. And like we talked about in this episode and previous episodes, it takes practice, it takes time, it takes, the want to do it. And that's why, that's why I love this, because I really feel like it's very, very useful, and it helps a lot of people.
And so just so you wonder about that time, it's the knowing and doing, right? So the great thing about this model, and what Dr. and I spent a couple of years on trying to perfect, was how do we make it so that the knowing part can happen very quickly, so I can focus on the implementing and doing and changing my habits and behaviors. So with multiple groups in a day or less, we've taken that 7% of productives and moved the entire group to knowing what to do to over 82+% consistently.
Wow.
various leadership groups and teams. That's the knowing. Now, are they doing it consistently after that? No, that's where we have to have the coaching and follow up and support. But the knowing to doing can happen extremely rapidly. And now all your leaders are using the same methodology and the same language to diagnose together and respond to situations, provides a baseline where decisions become exponentially faster in your organization.
Right. I love that. So, assessment.
Yeah.
David, Leigh, I don't know if this is a David question or a Leigh question. Tell me about this assessment and potentially what, Potentia wants to offer.
I'll leave it to David because he's put this together. And
so we have two different assessments that look at your productive leadership. And so one of the things we would love to do is, for those of you that are listening, is we would like you to participate in our ongoing research by getting a free assessment. So we like to give away 200 of those. And
Awesome.
So next time we can come back, we'll tell you a little bit about what we learned. We're not going to share them with anyone. You'll get the results. You can interpret it yourself, but we'll go through one of the next sessions to help you better understand what that tells you about your own leadership as it relates to these principles that we've started talking about.
I love it. Go ahead.
And to do that, Jason, or actually what we'll do is in the chat below here is we'll go ahead, and the first comment is going to have some instructions for how you can send us the information that we need in order to get that assessment to you.
Love it. Yeah. So pay attention to that. It's going to be in the show notes, and we'll have you do that. Leigh, David, thank you so much. Again, it's like, I don't know. As you can see, I think from episode to episode, I'm getting more and more excited because I know this works. I know how effective it is. I've seen it. I got my mom and dad since, 1980 when they started their first business. They read a book called Personality Insights, which was DISC. And it's been cool to see how it affected their life. And I hate to say like a little bit more surface level, but then to really dive into really like Potentia and like we talked about in the first episode, how much more there is to the person and what this has meant to me and my family and, all the businesses I've had. So thank you so much. If you like this episode, please share it. Please share it with your team. Make sure you pay attention to the show notes because that will be how you take the assessment and we'll get it to you. They'll go fast. So make sure we get this done. And so again, Leigh, David, thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode of Culture Camp. Thank you.
Take care.
Excellent. Thank you.